রোদের ইয়েটা আসবে ঠিক অপোজিটে
অনেক বড় আমার কাছে আমরা ফ্রেন্ডের সাথে
হ্যাঁ অসুবিধা
আপনার ফ্রেন্ডের সাথে এবার তুমি জানো
So this point over here, the trail goes right along the top of that.
Yeah.
And that's called the pitching point.
Pitching.
That's they pitch the logs off. Because this used to go in before they put the railroad track.
Okay.
And they would pitch the logs off into the river, tying on the barges, and then take them down to New York City or wherever. No,
Like, this is only for the goods one, right?
just for cargo.
আপনারা তুলেন আমি অহনের সাথে তুলবো অহনের নিয়ে
That's the US military US fort.
On the west shore, you can see more of the military academy at West Point. From north to south, or right to left, you can see stone buildings dotting the waterfront, which include the Turbine Lab, built in 1937, Lincoln Hall, built in 1910, named after Brigadier General George Arthur Lincoln, Cullom Hall, originally built in 1896 to memorialize the service and sacrifice of West Point graduates who died in war. The West Point Club, built in 1902 as an officers' club, Jefferson Hall, built in 2008, serves as the Academy's library. Today, the West Point Library has one of the finest collections of pre-20th century mathematics books in the world. Bartlett Hall, originally constructed in 1913 and named after William Bartlett. Thayer Hall, the largest stone building, is named after Sylvanus Thayer, the 33rd graduate of West Point, as well as the longest-serving and most influential superintendent in the Academy's history, serving from 1817 to 1833. Thayer Hall was completed in 1909. It was originally designed and constructed as the riding hall. The structure originally contained one large freestanding space in the main portion of the building, with horse stables and a hayloft located in an adjoining structure at the south end. Between 1955 and 1959, the riding hall was converted into an academic building and renamed Thayer Hall. Mahan Hall was in 1971 and named after Dennis Hart Mahan. A little farther south, you can see the Hotel Thayer. Deepest part of the Hudson River at 200 feet. Due to the S shape in the bend, explorers believed that the river stopped when they came to it. They eventually realized that after the sharp bend, the river continued. Although the shot heard around the world that ignited the American Revolution occurred a few miles outside of Boston, and the campaign that ended it took place in Virginia, the nexus of the conflict was New York's Hudson River Valley. Throughout the war, officers on both sides made it their top priority to gain control of the Hudson River and to keep hold of it at any cost. George Washington knew that if the British could control navigation on the Hudson River, they could divide the New England states from the southern states, disrupt transportation of supplies and men, and disconnect communications between the north and south. World's End marks an important strategic place for the Revolution. In 1775, to help defend the Hudson River from the British, the Continental Congress decided to build a fortification on the rocky island across from West Point. The island was originally known as Martelier's Rock. The fort that was to be built on the island was named Fort Constitution, after the British Constitution and in honor of the Revolution. The American Constitution was not yet created. The island was soon known as Constitution Island, as it is known today. Fort Constitution was never fully completed. In 1777, when the British started up the Hudson River from New York City, the unfinished fort was destroyed and never rebuilt. Maintaining control of the Hudson led Washington in 1778 to order construction of Fortress West Point, a complex of forts and redoubts that he dubbed the Key of America. A feature of the fortress was an iron chain, which was laid across the river to prevent further British incursions into the upper Hudson River. The West Point chain, as it was dubbed, stretched across the Hudson from West Point to Constitution Island. The purpose of the chain was simple. Any British ship attempting to bypass the fort would be completely stopped by the chain. The ship, now stopped by the chain, would be at the mercy of the numerous American batteries and cannons set up along the river. This chain was forged with the finest quality ore made at Sterling Iron Works by order and design of Thomas Matchett, captain of the artillery and engineer. The links, which were 2 feet long and weighed over 100 pounds each, were assembled on log barges and secured into place and stretched approximately 500 yards in length across the Hudson. Nothing like the West Point chain had ever been constructed. In 8 weeks, the labor of hundreds of ironworkers, lumbermen, wagon drivers, rivermen, and soldiers was complete. The West Point chain was never challenged by the British. Some of the links can be seen today at West Point's Trophy Point and in Washington's headquarters. In 1837, Constitution Island was sold to Henry Warner, who lost his fortune in a stock market crash and had to sell his house in New York City. Warner built a simple Victorian house on the island, which he lived in with his sister and 2 daughters, Susan and Anna. Susan and Anna were very religious and never married. They lived a reclusive life, close to poverty on the island. Even though they rarely left the island, they were very famous. The 2 sisters, using pen names, wrote 106 publications. Susan published the novel Wide, Wide World, which was a bestseller and was outsold only by Uncle Tom's Cabin. Anna's most famous publication was the hymn, Jesus Loves Me, This I Know. In 1908, 7 years before her death, Anna Warner sold the island to Margaret Sage, widow of the financier Russell Sage. The island was bequeathed to the United States Military Academy in 1909 and has been managed by the West Point Museum ever since. The 315-mile Hudson River is steeped in American history. As we've mentioned, it guided Henry Hudson in search of a northwest passage and served commerce as a transportation route during the Industrial Revolution. Industry provided jobs, created community, and brought economic growth to the region. However, an era of industrial pollution left its mark on the treasured river. Today, 200 miles of the Hudson River is classified by EPA as a Superfund site, one of the largest in the country. During a 30-year period, from 1947 to 1977, it is estimated that approximately 1.3 million pounds of PCBs were discharged into the Hudson River from 2 General Electric capacitor manufacturing plants located in the towns of Fort Edward and Hudson Falls, New York. Once PCBs entered the river, they were deposited and mixed with the sediments at many locations on the river bottom and at some locations along the shoreline in the floodplain. Since 1976, high levels of PCBs in fish and wildlife have been recorded. PCBs build up in the environment, increasing in concentration as they move up the food chain. In 1984, 200 miles of river between Hudson Falls and the Battery in New York City was placed on the EPA's national priorities list of the country's most contaminated hazardous waste sites. To address and restore GE's PCB contamination, dredging of river bottom sediment began in 2009 and was completed in 2015. In all, over 6 seasons of dredging, approximately 2.75 million cubic yards of PCB contaminated sediment was removed from the river bottom. Today, the Hudson River exists as one of the most extensively studied rivers in the country, having been monitored